And Theo, what's your last name?
Bullock, yeah.
Bullock.
Ted Bullock, yeah.
I noticed your car's been in and out of here for like a year and a half.
Yeah, definitely. It was April 20... Was it 2020? Or was it 2019?
I know it's been a couple years.
I originally pulled the motor out, the stock motor, and the reason I did it, I had no idea what I was getting into, but I had heard a lot about people LS swapping, them being more powerful, more reliable than something like the stock motor. So I was having a bunch of wiring harness issues, which this car is notorious for that. Just being as old as they are, you'll get corrosion in the wiring that goes to the core, and there's no metal left to actually conduct through the wiring. So one of the really
it's 30 years old.
Yeah, it's 30 years old, exactly. Yeah, one of the things you pretty much have to do in any of these older cars that haven't been completely garage kept their whole life is replace the entire wiring harness. And to do that you have to pull the motor out, because Nissan, actually this is the first car that Nissan used a CAD software to basically design the engine and drivetrain and then 3D design the unibody of the car around it. So it's like perfectly tight, like the engine, like if you have a stock motor in here completely stock, it's just like flush, there's no space around the motor. You can't do anything.
Can't reach nothing.
You have to pretty much drop the motor to do any type of substantial work. And I was like, this thing's so tight. These are like known as the hardest cars to work on because it's so tight in there. I was like, if we pull this motor out, I'm probably just going to LS swap it. And again, I had no idea what I was getting into. I had no idea I was going to spend as much as I did, but it's been totally worth it. Absolutely love the thing now. Well, not now.
Not at this moment. So what is it back in here for this time? I noticed the motor's obviously out of it, but like I said, I've noticed it come in and out. So when it came here originally, you had put the motor in yourself. Somebody else had built it, and then you put the motor in.
Yeah, so I had someone build the motor, someone that I met through a friend. He built the motor for me, and we did a bunch of internal stuff. It was basically a block that was machined out, new heads that were machined out. So everything was pretty much new from the start. And we got adapters from LOJ. We used a bunch of stuff from LOJ Conversions. They pretty much make kits that you can pretty much completely throw a LS in here, and everything just mounts
headers
up.
And everything.
Yeah. They work with Cooks for the headers and exhaust pieces, and then like for the clutch is made by Clutch Masters. It's kind of like a partnership with LOJ. So LOJ really kind of did all of the dirty work and made all of the stuff that makes it a lot easier to put this in here. But of course, there's still a ton of custom work that has to be done. But basically, most recent reason it's in here, it's been running great. It dynoed 604 wheel horsepower.
As I know it. I noticed put a WhippleCharged on it when it was here. So
yeah, so
WhippleCharger.
That actually, when I first brought it here,
I don't think that was in the plans at first, was it?
Yeah, no, not at all. Yeah, a little scatterbrained with my stories right now, but yeah, so I brought it here with my friend had helped me put a couple of the LOJ pieces on here and mount the motor to the transmission, and then we had put it into the car as one piece, which is a little tricky. You kind of have to drop the front subframe, but we had it sitting in here, nothing else done, and that's when I brought it here. I had purchased a turbo from one of my friends who had it on his Supra, and the turbo only had 3,000 miles, so my initial intention was to turbo it, and I was really excited about that, but I learned from Jason and Scooter here at the shop that turbo was a little too small for the motor, and it was going to essentially over time overspin, and it would tear up the turbo and eventually probably shoot metal shavings into the motor, which would be catastrophic. So after talking about maybe getting a different turbo and still running all the custom piping and everything, we realized even with the LS motor, which is a little bit smaller than the stock motor, It was going to be really tight in here, so there was going to have to be some frame modification in the front, which was going to wind up being really expensive to do, to have something that's still structurally sound, but gives room for the turbo, intercooler piping, and exhaust piping and everything. So they wound up, I wanted the car to kind of be a sleeper and have everything fit under the hood initially, but they wound up convincing me to go supercharger, and I don't regret it at all. I'm super happy. I absolutely love the supercharger.
Which it made
just on,
600 on
so
10
just
pounds.
on 10 pounds of boost, which is basically like break-in tune. We actually wound up making 604 wheel horsepower and 611 torque.
Yeah. On pump gas.
Well, that's actually on E85. Yeah, we're just on E85 right now. It does have a flex fuel sensor and everything, so it is ready if we were to retune. I would be able to do 93, and I kind of thought I wanted to be able to do 93 and E85 so that I wouldn't have any issues, like if I'm going on a trip or something like that. But like I said, I had no idea what I was getting into, and this is kind of too crazy of a car to really be taking on trips. Like, driving it is intense. The shifts are really tight, the clutch is really heavy, and it's just a lot of power. It's so loud. It's super fun to drive, to get out on the highway and just rip it and take off. But yeah,
unexpected to say the least.
Yeah, to take it on a trip that'd be kind of intense. I actually bought another car so that I can tow it, be able to tow the car, take it to shows out of town. Anything that's more than like an hour and a half, 2 hours away, I would probably tow it. Yeah.
But it's more than capable of driving. You're just saying it's just kind of too rowdy for you.
We're in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I actually took it down to Atlanta for the Caffeine and Octane show that they have first Sunday of every month at Perimeter Mall down there. I've taken it down there 2 or 3 times now.
Okay.
But it's got 1,600 miles on it, on the motor and everything, as it sits right now. The motor's actually out of it. There was a little hole in the block that had been welded back together, because it was a used block, of course. It was originally out of a 2001 Tahoe iron block 5.3 that we had bored out to be a 5.7. But yeah, there was a little hole in the side that had been welded back together. And I kind of think probably when it was welded back together, the temperature of the block didn't get high enough, so it didn't weld solid enough, so it was leaking some oil. But yeah, that's why it's out right now. We're just going to go ahead and change out the block, get rid of any possibility of any issues there.
Hopefully use all the same internals. And
yeah, that's the intention. Hopefully use any parts internally from the motor that we can still salvage. Anything that's still going to be solid enough. Of course,
any plans on upping the boost or changing the horsepower at all, or are you content?
Eventually, I think probably this year. I'll probably put a smaller pulley on there, because I think Jason said it's boost mapped and ready to go for just putting a smaller pulley on. I'll be able to make more boost, more power, just like that. I'll definitely run it on the dyno just to see what it's making with the smaller pulley. But yeah, definitely intend on putting a smaller pulley on there, making some more boost, making some more power. I'd be totally happy with 750, 800.
Especially for something you can drive.
Yeah, I mean, this is 604, 611 wheel horsepower and torque is already absolutely ridiculous. I am scared to death of this car. It's a lot of fun, but I definitely have a healthy fear of it. I don't want to destroy it.
But you went with the Holley Terminator X.
Yeah, we went with the Holley Terminator X.
I mean, you didn't take any. You definitely didn't skimp on anything.
Yeah, well, at first I was kind of trying to take some shortcuts, and those definitely came back to bite me. And Jason and them have obviously encouraged me to do things right, and I've kind of started on a path of doing everything right rather than trying to save too much money, because sometimes with certain stuff I'll try to be like, well, if it's not broken, let's not fix it. But in reality, with something that's making this much power, you kind of have to upgrade some stuff while you're in there doing stuff, because otherwise you're going to wind up taking it back out to fix it again. So ultimately you'll wind up saving money long term, doing stuff right the first time.
So how long have you had the car?
So I got the car probably 5.5 years ago.
And did it run with the stock motor and stuff?
It ran with the stock motor. It was stock. It was the, I think it's a 3-liter V6. It was a twin turbo. Had some little tiny baby turbos on there. This car actually had or it still has, the body has 200-something thousand miles on it.
Oh, that's...
But yeah, it ran and drove. I actually traded one of my other cars that I had for it. And of course it's come a long way from there. But yeah, this car was my daily driver for a minute. Probably a year and a half, this was my daily driver. I had so much trouble out of it, I was like, I'm gonna LS swap it.
And when you LS swapped it, so you went with a 6-speed T56?
Well, it's actually, right now it's the stock twin turbo Z 5-speed.
Wow.
Yeah. So the gear ratios are definitely not ideal. If I was to use a T56 or something like that, it would probably come out a little bit better as far as being able to accelerate and it handling power a little bit better, because that is something I am slightly concerned about, is long-term the transmission holding up. Because one, it's a 30-year-old transmission, and two, this car at the crank made 300 horsepower flat in 1991 when it was new.
Yeah.
So it's kind of designed for 220, 240 at the wheels and 300 at the crank horsepower-wise.
Yeah, not only the 600 horsepower is impressive, but the torque, shocking at 600's just as impressive.
Yeah, the torque is insane, and that's all thanks to the Whipple.
Yeah, and that's amazing that the factory 5-speed worked. And the rear end,
it's really
everything's
LOJ kind of makes everything, that kind of brings it all together and makes it really easy relatively. Obviously, still, like I said, a lot of custom stuff that Top End had to take care of, but they've done super well. I mean, something like that, that reservoir right there is completely welded. The little custom CNC out spacer for the intake on the supercharger, which you can't see now because the motor is kind of over there, but yeah, I mean, all of this right here too. They did a beautiful job on everything.
So, do you have anyone you want to thank besides obviously LJ?
Yeah, LOJ made everything a lot smoother, and I kind of had tried to avoid doing some of the LOJ stuff at first because it's definitely a little bit more expensive than some alternatives, but the alternatives were just subpar. They didn't fit together. LOJ, everything just fits together almost like it's factory. All the brackets, the transmission being able to mount right up to the LS motor, the clutch that they partnered with Clutch Masters for. We tried a bunch of different stuff with the headers and exhaust, and just going for the Cooks headers. It's a partnership with Cooks with LOJ. That was the only way that everything was going to clear and fit all in there, because even though it's a smaller motor than the stock one, it is still tight. It is tight in there. Yeah, so it makes it tricky, but
anybody?
Yeah, LOJ, the Holley's been awesome. The Terminator X has been awesome. It's super cool, the little display that comes with it, and it's crazy cheap for what they have to offer. And then the Whipple, absolutely love the Whipple. I had no idea I would be so crazy about a supercharger. It just looks so good coming through the hood, and
it's instant.
See, I've got a picture here of how it kind of comes through the hood.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
and it's instant.
Yeah, it's instant torque.
And what's the name of the Instagram?
Now You Don't Z32 is my Instagram.
This way you find you, follow the build.
Yeah, absolutely. Come follow me, check it out. This car has caused me to meet a bunch of really cool people. I pretty much can't go anywhere without, as soon as I park, 5 or 6 people are walking up asking me about it. So yeah, it's
the old saying,
some cool opportunities.
It's the right car when you can park it and walk away and look back at it before you get in the.
Definitely, yeah, it's definitely a car you look back at as you're walking away. Yeah, it feels unreal that I have a car that makes this much power, and it's addicting. It's addicting. As soon as I have a problem with it, I gotta get it back here to top end, get it to get sorted out so I can be back in it.
Be back on the road.
Yeah, it's been about a month and a half since I've driven it last, because we had a little issue with the clutch, but we're getting that taken care of, and hopefully it'll be back on the road soon. Super pumped to be back in it. I've only gotten to put 1,600 miles on it so far.
So they can definitely find you at Caffeine Cars and Octane in Atlanta.
I'll definitely be going to Caffeine and Octane pretty often, just because it's pretty close. It's a huge show. It's an awesome show, and it's the first Sunday of every month. So yeah, I love going to stuff like that.
All right. You have any plans of ever taking it down the track, or with a factory transmission in the rear end? I assume you don't want to.
I would definitely love to take it on the track. I want to kind of get it to where it's like super reliable and I'm not having any issues out of it. And then also like kind of the cooling system, we designed a little bit more for street use. So we may have to do some additional work with the cooling in order to get that track ready. And then I'll definitely need some brakes because I'm running drilled and slotted rotors and then some upgraded pads, but it's still like essentially OEM style, so it's not anything significantly upgraded.
I would think road racing, some chasing cones would be fun.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
That would probably be as much fun as drag racing.
Honestly, just driving around in this thing is fun. Like even if you're not speeding, if you're just going the speed limit, it's so loud and aggressive, such an intense experience.
Pop the T-tops out.
Yeah, pop the T-tops out. It's been a little cold for that here recently, but yeah, definitely looking forward to summer.
Well, good deal with Theo. We appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time for this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And,
thank you guys so much for building me my dream car.
I mean, just the details, like the fuel hoses, stuff like that. I guess you picked all that out, I assume.
Yeah, you'll definitely have to get some more footage once they slap it all back together. This doesn't do it justice. It looks absolutely beautiful, all put together, and the Whipple poking out of the hood, it's unreal.
Good deal. Well, I appreciate your time, Theo.
Absolutely.